This is just a subject, a topic we're going to cover. The Christian life is about learning things that are unnatural to the natural person. The natural man has to be retaught how he should act, because when you've been made a new man, he's supposed to be doing new things. One of those things that we'll cover tonight is we should have contentment. The new man is to be content. There's a story about a pilot who was always looking down intently at a certain valley in the Appalachians when the plane passed overhead. One day his co-pilot asked, "What's so interesting about that spot?" The pilot replied, "You see that stream? Well, when I was a kid, I used to sit down there on a log and fish. Every time an airplane would fly over, I would look up and wish I were flying. Now I look down there and wish I was fishing." Contentment. We're supposed to have contentment. And if you don't have it, you'll never have it. You've got to determine you're going to be content. It's a decision. Just like the man flying the plane. When he was sitting there fishing, he thought flying a plane would be great fun. Then when he got in the plane, he thought, man, it would be great just to sit down there with nothing to do but fish. It's always greener on the other side. Till you get to the other side and you look back and it's still greener on that side. Just settle it. Always the other side is greener, no matter which side of it you are. In Psalms 37, verse 16, he says, "A little that a righteous man hath is better than the riches of many wicked." You may not have a whole lot of possessions and things, but you can have contentment. You can be content. Godliness with contentment, the Bible says, is great gain. You've gotten out ahead of the game if you've gotten godliness. 1 Timothy 6:6, he says that, "But godliness with contentment is great gain." You've gotten a lot. You filled it up. He said there in Psalms that just having a little bit with righteousness is better than many riches of a wicked man. Saints should exhibit contentment. You should be able to look at a person and see contentment. They should be content. If that's a person if that's a Christian that you're looking at. If the person you're looking at is wicked, you should be seeing that too. Wickedness. A Christian should exhibit contentment. Here's the different places it should come out in your calling. In 1 Corinthians 7, verse 20. 1 Corinthians 7, verse 20. You'll find many Christians are not content with even their spiritual life as far as what God's called them to do. 1 Corinthians 7, verse 20. "Let every man abide in the same calling wherein he was called." Wherever God puts you is where God intends you. Get comfortable with it. The more you fight it, the longer he's going to keep you there. The sooner you get comfortable with it, the more you'll enjoy it, and the more he might promote you to another spot. We should be content with something else that's a tough one. Luke chapter 3, verse 14. You should be content with your wages. You should be content with the money you're making. That's a tough one. Now, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't seek to better your income. But you shouldn't be complaining about your income. If you've sought for the way to increase your income and God has not given the increase, do not complain about it. Say, "God, thank you for the answer." He'll give you ways to increase it, ways to better yourself and to move up and to get a better paying job or whatever you need. He'll do that. But if he's not done it, you got to say, "Thank you. I'm content. Whatever you've given me is what I've got." In Luke 3, verse 14. Now we've got to think about who this conversation is between. It's between Jesus Christ and Roman soldiers. Soldiers, tough men. And the soldiers likewise demanded of him, saying, What shall we do? And he said unto them, Do violence to no man, neither accuse any falsely, and be content with your wages. Now I said Jesus Christ. This is John the Baptist, isn't it? He says, Be content with your wages. Yes, John the Baptist. When John the Baptist is out there baptizing them. He's telling these guys, look at the things he's telling them to do. This is a soldier he's talking to. He says, don't do violence to any man. What do you think their job is? Okay, well, there's a difference in war and violence. While they have to fight in warfare, that's different than just being a violent person. So he's saying, don't be a violent person. Do your job, but don't be a violent person when it's not necessary. Neither accuse any falsely. Okay, well, that's just a good rule of thumb. But hey, that's what the Roman soldiers did. Because it was almost as though there was a military dictatorship. The soldier bore command because of the sword. He could get what he needed immediately. And Rome needed them, so they overlooked a lot. He says, be content with your wages. Ask a soldier today, none of them are. Even though they've hiked, I just saw where they hiked the re-enlistment to 100,000 for some. And the Navy SEALs, their re-enlistments are always humongous. We used to look for them on the car lot. If you had a Navy SEAL that had just re-upped, you know you had a sale. Whatever he wanted, he could get. You should be content with what things God has provided. In Hebrews 13, verse 5. Hebrews 13, 5. He says, let your conversation be without covetousness, and be content with such things as you have. For he hath said, I will never leave thee nor forsake thee. Now, if we move by that verse fast, we can just take one point off of it and say, okay, be content. But if we really delve into that verse, it'll slap us around. Because what it says is be content with what you have. What does he say you have? Look at the last phrase in it. Jesus Christ. You should be content with nothing but Jesus Christ. If you got down to having zero, as long as you had Jesus Christ, he's saying you should be content. Furthermore, he says, let your conversation be without covetousness. What's covetousness? It's wanting something you don't have. Okay, so he says, let your conversation. That's a tough one. That knocks out 90% of people's conversation. Man, I wish I had, if only this, if, there goes all the daydreams.
Oh, that's actually helping me out in this remodel job. No,
Right. All the daydreams are gone. That's it. Covetousness. He says, be content with such things as you have. For he hath said, I'll never leave thee nor forsake thee. Now there's certain things you should not be content without. You should not be content without having Jesus Christ and everything that comes with him. Everything he offers, you should have. If you don't have it, go after it. That's every Christian in the book. They're always in a race. They're trying to attain something. But it's not the same things that this world is trying to attain. Their goals, their aspirations are somewhere farther than the physical. He says, be content. He says, be content with food and raiment. That's a tough one. Who's ever content with the food they got or the raiment they got? Okay, he says to be content. 1 Timothy 6:8. 1 Timothy 6, verse 8. He says, and having food and raiment, let us be therewith content. So, did you notice something? If you don't have food and you don't have raiment, it's okay to not be content. According to the verse. He said, if you've got food and you've got raiment, don't be discontent then. But you know what? God's going to always make sure you have food and you have raiment. Now, it may not be caviar and it may not be lobster, but it will be Five Guys and it will... No. It may not be 40 pairs of new shoes, but you're going to have something you can wear. You're going to have something you can eat. And you can count on it. I know it's unfortunate, but you'll get to experience that at some point in your life. You'll get to experience, I don't have the money for food. And I've got these bills, and I don't even have the money for those bills. And I'm about to starve. And you know what God will do a lot of times? He'll ignore your bill and give you money for food. Or he'll provide the food itself. Why? Because that's the way he works. He says, I've already decided if you don't have food and you don't have raiment, then you could be discontent. So I'm not going to let you be discontent. You'll have food and you'll have raiment. It might be cheese and crackers. It might be ramen noodle. But you'll have something, and he'll do something special with that food. It'll satisfy. It'll satisfy you. One of the curses God gives is that people can eat and not be satisfied. So, without Christ, there's no satisfaction in even the food and the raiment. He can make little raiment and little food satisfying. The other thing is God's promises should lead to contentment. When you know his promises, when you know what he has promised he will do for you personally, not corporately, not I can do or one day I will do, but what he promised he will for you do. When you've appropriated those promises personally, that'll give you some contentment. In Hebrews 13:5, he said, I will never leave thee nor forsake thee. Now, if you've got Jesus Christ right there, who's never leaving and never forsaking you, you got all you need. That's better than having Donald Trump's password to his bank account. That's much better. Jesus Christ has a lot more than any rich man you could think of. They all are paupers compared to him. The wicked want contentment. They desire contentment. There's certain things that the lost world really does desire, and they cannot attain. One of those is peace. They can't get peace. They strive and strive for it and can't find it. Another one is contentment. They can't have contentment. That's something that God gives. In Isaiah 5, verse 8, Isaiah 5, verse 8. He says, woe unto them that join house to house, that lay field to field, till there be no place that they may be placed alone in the midst of the earth. Okay, these people have decided they're going to build a big city. The way they're going to do that is they're going to bring a bunch of people in, and they're going to build right on top of each other. Like you see most box subdivisions. You know, it's one house right on top of the other. You can reach out your window and slap your neighbor. That's what they're doing here. He says, but the reason they're doing that is because it creates a hub of activity. And you know what that does? It makes you a busybody. Just by default. You hear them throwing dishes next door, you got to find out what's going on. If you don't get up and go find out what's going on, you got to discuss it and figure out in your mind what's going on. He says here that they may be placed alone in the midst of the earth. That's what they're trying to get away from. Why? Because then they'll have to talk to God. When you're alone, it's just you and God, he talks. He does. Your conscience begins to talk. It wakes up. It says, hey, don't be thinking that. Hey, that's the wrong way to go. You can't desire those things. You can't have those. Your conscience will come alive. When you're alone, you get to seeing things from a spiritual side. He says people tend to try to congregate. There's a lot of loneliness in big crowds. Big crowds are very lonely. The only place you're not alone is where Jesus Christ never leaves you. Then you're never alone. But on this earth, you can't find a place that you could be comforted without him. It's impossible. But you can have contentment with him. In Ecclesiastes 5:10, he says, he that loveth silver shall not be satisfied with silver. That is to say, he's going to get him some silver. That's what he loves. He's after silver. Nor he that loveth abundance with increase. Some people, the hoarders, they just love to increase. It doesn't matter what it is. Let's pile it in. You see some of these vehicles go around town with just pure junk mail and stuff all crammed in their windows. They've only got a little space cleared off so they can see right in front of them. That's the perfect example. They love increase. It doesn't matter what it is. Let's just increase it. But they're not satisfied. He says this also is vanity. That's the world's way. There are some examples of contentment in the Bible. The Bible's full of them. We'll look at a couple. Barzillai in 2 Samuel 19, verse 33. Barzillai's 2 Samuel 19, verse 33. This is when David is returning from Absalom's revolt. 2 Samuel 19:33. And the king said unto Barzillai, come thou over with me, and I will feed thee with me in Jerusalem. Barzillai said unto the king, how long have I to live, that I should go up with the king unto Jerusalem? I am this day 80 years old. So he's 80 years old. And can I discern between good and evil? Can thy servant taste what I eat or what I drink? Can I hear any more the voice of singing men and singing women? Wherefore then should thy servant be yet a burden unto my lord the king? Thy servant will go a little way over Jordan with the king, and why should the king recompense it me with such a reward? So he's saying, look, I'm a nobody. Don't be wasting your time or your money with me. I've got all I need. I'm about to cross over to somewhere where it's really good. Verse 37. Let thy servant, I pray thee, turn back again, that I may die in mine own city, and be buried by the grave of my fathers and my mother. But behold, thy servant Chimham, let him go over with my lord the king, and do to him whatsoever seemeth good unto thee. Contentment means you're satisfied with somebody else getting goods that you could have gotten. That's a tough one. That's a tough one. When we see some goodies that we've always wanted, or that we've spent our lifetime and never achieved. He had never achieved this. Barzillai has never been to the palace. He's never had a banquet with the king. He's saying, look, at this point in my life, there's no point in me trying to achieve those things. I've lived a life and figured out I can do with what I've got right here. I don't have to attain to any more popularity. Let one of these young guys that hadn't gotten anything in life, let them have it. I'm all right. Contentment with something you could have, but you don't need. That's a tough one. The Shunammite, that's in 2 Kings 4, verse 13. The Shunammite. This woman has done good for Elijah. She's built him a room and taken care of him. And he says, it's just the right thing for us to do something for her, for all she's done for us, and that's true. You should recompense good for good. So he says here, and he said unto him, he's talking to his servant, say now unto her, behold, thou hast been careful for us with all this care. What is to be done for thee? Wouldst thou be spoken for to the king, or to the captain of the host? And she answered, I dwell among mine own people. Don't worry about all that business. I don't need any great specialties. If we would realize what we've been given already, we'd realize we really don't need any more extras. We don't. Now, that doesn't mean God's never going to give you something to achieve. He is always going to give you something to strive for. But the difference is in why you're doing it. It's not about a personal thing. It's about Him saying, do this. Now it's no longer a personal goal. It's a mission from God. You're doing it for Him. So she says, if you're trying to do something just for me, I got my people over here. What more do I need? I don't need anything extra. For us, we don't need anything extra unless God says, hey, I want you to go achieve this. You find all the way through the Old Testament, He's telling them, go get that spot of land over there. Go conquer that nation right there. They're not conquering it because they need extra. They had plenty. He's saying, go do it because I want you to do it. I've got a plan. That's what we got to get on. We got to get on God's plan. The normal thing is for flesh to say, I got a plan, and it's got plenty plans. The flesh will demand all day long and never shut up. It's hard to make the flesh shut up and say, we're content with just what we got. Now let's go find out what God wants. That's what it's all about. What does God want? If He wants something, we'll go do that. You remember David. David says, he's got this same spirit about him. He says, look, I've been looking around, and I got a lot of junk here. God's been really good to me. I got a great big house. I'm the king. I've got Zion here. He says, I want to build God a house. I built me a good house. He needs a house. So he calls Nathan in and says, hey, got a great plan here. Let's do something good for God. That's a good spirit. That's the right attitude. Let's build God a house. You know what he said? No doing. Don't do it. But he did give him a lot to do. Rarely do we ever get out of work. We may get out of the big goal we think we get to do for God, but we never get out of work. You know what his job was? Is he said, I want you to get all the supplies. I want you to have everything sitting here ready so that when you die, this thing can be built in a year and a half or whatever it took to put the thing up. That's what he did. Now, there's another one. Let's see. Proverbs 30, verse 8. Proverbs 30, verse 8. Here's the reason we have to have contentment. This is just a fact. Proverbs is a book full of facts. It's the laws of nature. It's like the book of gravity and, if you talk back to your mama, you're going to get slapped. I mean, it's just common sense rules. Here he goes. Proverbs 30, verse 8. Remove far from me vanity and lies. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with food convenient for me, lest I be full and deny thee, and say, who is the Lord? Or lest I be poor and steal and take the name of my God in vain. That's a good thing to get to. It's a good thing to say, okay, Lord, I don't want to be dirt poor. Give me what I need so that I'm not in danger of becoming a reproof to you. I'll steal. I might fall in with the wrong crowd. You know what happens when you fall in with the wrong crowd? The first thing that goes is language. Because you got to fit in. You got to prove you're part of the crowd. Well, that you can do real quick, can't you? You can't go out and do a big mission and prove to them who you are, but you sure can speak like them. So, what's Peter do? He says, well, if I want to show that I'm not part of the disciples crowd, fastest way I can do it is just start cursing. He says here, I recognize something. These Skid Row bums out here, their propensity is to curse. Don't let me get to that point. He says, but the other end isn't any good either. Those rich people, they think they're full and they don't need God. So there's a middle ground in there. So we've got to be comfortable with what God's given us. Now, for us, He's not given us the Skid Row. So we don't have any. That's far from our problem. The Skid Row is nobody's problem in here. However, we may have the problem of riches. Doesn't seem like it, does it? But if you compare what we have to many a nation around us, we've got more than plenty. Anybody in Syria right now would trade places with you with a drop of a hat. We've got it good, very good. We should be content. Look at Paul in Philippians 4, verse 11. Philippians 4, verse 11. This is how you know, this verse right here, is how you know Paul never made it across the ocean to Florida. He says, not that I speak in respect of want, for I have learned in whatsoever state I am. He definitely wasn't in Florida. Therewith to be content. So he says, in whatever position I've been put in, I can find a spot. I can clear out a spot between me and God and be content. I've figured that out through trial and error. Verse 12. I know both how to be abased, and I know how to abound. Everywhere and in all things I am instructed both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. He said there's a common denominator to all those situations. God expects you to be content. So He'll try you in all of those spots. It's just as hard to be content with a lot as it is to be content with a little. A lot is not the answer to contentment. A lot just means you need a lot more. When you have a lot, you have a lot more bills. When you have a lot, you have a lot more opportunities to buy more junk that you don't need. Right, just junk, just stuff. Romans chapter 8, verse 32. We don't have to worry about not having the things we need and not having good things. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying you're going to have a miserable existence. You're not going to have a miserable existence. You're going to have a good existence. David said that I've been young and now I'm old, and I've learned, he said that he's never seen the righteous forsaken nor his seed begging bread. He said that you're not going to get all that. So he says here in Romans 8:32, he that spared not his own son, that's God, but delivered him up for us all. Okay, so God did something special. He said, the best heaven has, I'm going to give. Now, if He was willing to do that, then you know the rest of this is true. How shall He not with Him also freely give us all things? So, if you know that God gave Jesus Christ in order that we could have salvation, it's a fact. You're not going to need other things. He's going to be sure you have them. Look at 2 Corinthians. I should have marked this, but I didn't. 2 Corinthians is a good book. They're all good books. in verse 3. 2 Corinthians 1, verse 3. 2 Corinthians 1:3 said, "Blessed be God." That's the one who gave Jesus and will give us all things freely. "Blessed be God, the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercies and the God of all comfort." Okay, once you realize that, the task of contentment is not as big a job, because the one we have, the one who's never going to leave us, is also the God of all comfort, who comforteth us in all our tribulation, that we might be able to comfort them which are in any trouble by the comfort wherewith we ourselves are comforted. Now, this is good to know. If you get to the point where you're in doubt of being content, that's where you're about to learn something. If the flesh says you cannot be content with this, then you know you really can. According to the Bible, you can. And now you have an opportunity to learn something. Okay, what do you need when you don't have the things that perception has said you need? You need contentment without seeing the fulfillment of what the flesh wants. So what do you need? Comfort. Comfort will supersede the fulfilled need you think you have. Comfort will do it. And he's promised here, I'll give you comfort. Why does he want to give us comfort? It's not for us. That sounds strange, but it's not for us. It's so it can be passed on. He says he's going to comfort you in all your tribulations. So regardless of what tribulation this life puts you through, you have the Comforter. He said over in there in John, if I leave, I'm not going to leave you comfortless. I'll come to you. That we may be able to comfort them which are in any trouble. Now, people don't believe this. What they tend to do is they tend to say, well, I've never had that issue, so why don't you go talk to somebody else who's had an issue like that? That's not the answer. What's the verse says? What's the verse say? It says, that ye may be able to comfort them which are in any trouble. If God's brought them across your path, think back. He's given you some kind of comfort so you can pass it on to them. In any situation they're in, at some point in your life, if God's allowed you to cross paths, he's found something in your life he's comforted you with that'll be a help to them. It may not be the very same situation, but it's the same comforter, and he'll comfort them. This first chapter is a good one to memorize. It's Paul at the low ebb of his life. He says, I was in prison, I was wore out, and we thought we were about to die. He said we'd given up hope of life. And then all of a sudden he says, I snapped out of it. I said, hey, wait a minute. I can't even trust what I'm thinking now. I know God has delivered in the past. Matter of fact, he's going to deliver me right now, and there will be another time he does it in the future. That's appropriating contentment and comfort. They're closely related. All right, that's our subject for tonight. I told you it's going to be a quickie.